everyone, welcome to Botany Insider, and in this lecture we would be dealing with the topic of microbial physiology in detail. So the topic microbial physiology is a subtopic of the unit 2 that we are dealing, that is the cell biology. So let us understand that what is microbial physiology all about. So talking about the introduction, so microbial physiology, it is a study of the microbial structure, the functions it performs and the response of the microbial activity to the environmental changes. And we can also say that in this particular physiology we study about the metabolism, the genetic composition of the microbes. It is the combined application of microbiology, genetics and biochemistry. So in simple words, in microbial physiology we are studying about the microbes complete structure, function and the responses that it shows to the external change in the environment. We would be studying all of this in the subtopic of the microbial physiology. So when we talk about the microbial physiology, that means we are studying about the microbes. And what are microbes? So when we classify the organisms depending upon their complexity, so we have two main type of organisms. One are the prokaryotes or the primitive ones, and the second one are the eukaryotes or the advanced ones. So microbes fall into the category of the prokaryotes, that is they are the primitive organisms. So talking about the structure of the prokaryotes or the microbes in particular, the main or the common important components that these prokaryotes or the microbes carry are, the first one is the cell wall, then we have a capsulated layer inside the cell wall, then we have the DNA or the nucleoid which is the genetic material, then we have the plasma membrane, we have ribosomes, cytoplasm, bacterial flagellum. This flagellum helps in the movement of the bacteria, and we also have some mesosomes. And what are mesosomes? So the infoldings of the plasma membrane towards the inner side of the cytoplasm are given the name of mesosomes, and what are their functions we would be understanding in the next slide. So in this slide we have the important organelles and their functions listed down. Make sure you remember each one of them because questions have been framed many times from this area. So we have the nucleoid present because prokaryotes are the primitive organisms. So instead of the nucleus, which is a characteristic of the advanced organisms, we have a primitive form of the nucleus which is given the name of nucleoid, which is present in the prokaryotes. Then we have the mesosomes, which are the infoldings of the plasma membrane towards the cytoplasmic sites, which is helpful for the respiration process in the prokaryotes. Then we have the cell wall, which provides protection to the bacterium. Then we have the flagella, which helps the bacteria to move from one place to the other place. Then we have ribosomes performing the protein synthesis. Then we have the nucleoid, which is the genetic material, and then we have the capsule, which helps in first the adherence. Adherence means the attachment of the bacterium to a surface, and also it helps in the protection from the immune system. We also have some pillars present in the bacterium which helps in the conjugation. And what is conjugation? So conjugation is a method of reproduction in case of the prokaryotes. And lastly we have the plasmid, which also helps in the reproduction. Pillars helps in the attachment and plasmids transports from one bacterium to the next bacterium by the help of these sex pillars. We would be understanding about that what are pillars and how this complete function occurs in a separate video. So let us understand about the adherence factors and their function. Make sure you remember them. This is also one of the most repeatedly asked area in the CSIR net. So the first adherence factor is the capsule, and the function it performs is that it makes specific and the non-specific attachment. What does this mean? So consider we have this bacterium. So capsule helps the bacteria to have the ability or to identify that to which surface it need to attach, that is it helps in specific and the both non-specific attachments. And also capsule is a polysaccharide layer. Make sure you remember this composition. Then we have the slime layer around the bacteria or the microbes, which are loosely packed, and it is made up of exopolysaccharides. Remember, capsule is made up of polysaccharides and slime layer is made up of exopolysaccharide. There is just the difference of this exo word, which could be used for tricking us in the examination. And this slime layer protects the microbes from the antibiotics. And then we have fimbriae and the pili, which also acts as a attachment factor for the microbes. So let's discuss about the types of the bacteria. So we have mainly two types of bacteria. One is the gram positive and the other one is the gram negative. The main difference that is between the gram positive and the gram negative bacterium is that in case of the gram positive, there is no lipopolysaccharide, and in case of gram negative, we have lipopolysaccharides present. And the second important difference is that the gram positive ones are composed of approximately 60 to 90% of peptidoglycan, but in case of gram negative, we have only 10 to 20% of the peptidoglycans present. The next important difference is that in case of gram positive, we have the teichoic acid present on their cell walls, but in case of gram negative, there is no teichoic acid present. The last difference is that the gram positive ones have a thicker peptidoglycan, but in case of gram negative, there is thinner peptidoglycan present. So this is the difference between the gram positive and the gram negative. Let us understand this by the help of this diagram. So on the left hand side, we have the gram positive, in which we have the teichoic acid, which is one of the major distinction between the gram positive and the gram negative. In gram positive, we have the teichoic acid present. In case of gram negative, there is no teichoic acid. The second important difference is that in case of the gram positive, we have around 60 to 90% of peptidoglycan, but as you can see, in case of gram negative, we have only 10 to 20% of the peptidoglycan present. Next important difference is that gram positive is comparatively simpler or comparatively less complex in structure, but the gram negative is having more of the components and is more advanced. As you can see that the gram negative have porins present, it have lipopolysaccharides present, and also many advanced membrane proteins are also present. But when we look at the gram positive, there is less of complexity and there is more of peptidoglycan and simplicity present in the gram positive one. Make sure you remember the difference between the gram positive and the gram negative. We have discussed it both ways by the help of the pointers and also by the help of the diagram. So make sure you remember them. So let's talk about the bacterial growth now. So talking about the bacterial growth, we need to understand that at which medium or in which medium how the bacteria grows. But before understanding or before going into the depth of the concept, we need to understand that what are the main phases of the bacterial growth curve. So talking about the bacterial growth curve, when we plot this on the graph, we have on the y-axis the log of the number of bacteria, and on the x-axis we have the time given. So initially when the bacteria starts growing in any medium, so the first phase that the bacteria experiences is the lag phase, or we can also call it as an adjustment phase, where the number of the bacteria are less because the bacteria in this case or the bacteria in this phase is actually trying to adjust into the new environment. And after the lag phase, we have the exponential phase, where we can see a rapid growth in the number of the bacterial cell. Why? Because now the bacteria have adjusted to the surrounding and now it can easily flourish in this new environment. After the exponential phase, when all the nutrients and all the other resources important for the survival and the growth are used by the bacteria, there occurs a stationary phase where there occurs no growth in the number of bacteria. The number of bacteria remains constant with respect to time, but As it approaches towards the end of the stationary phase, the resources starts to decline, the resources starts to come to an end. This is the reason why that the bacterial population or the bacterial colony enters into the death phase, where we can see a sharp decline in the number of the bacterial population. Reason, there is not ample amount of resources present in order to have the bacteria supplemented with the growth components, and hence there occurs the death of the bacteria in case of the death phase. So we can see we have four main phases. The first one is the lag phase, then we have the exponential phase with exponentially growing or unlimited growth of the bacteria, then there occurs a stationary phase, and finally there occurs a death phase. One important point to remember is that after the exponential phase, when we look at the bacterial growth in the theoretical manner, there occurs exponential growth of the bacteria without taking into consideration the other important limiting factors. So theoretically there occurs an exponential curve growth from the beginning till the end, but when we look at it in the experimental and the realistic manner, we could find out that there are four phases: lag phase, exponential phase, stationary phase, and the death phase. So this was all about the bacterial growth. Let us understand about the bacterial toxin in detail. So talking about bacterial toxin, we have two main type of bacterial toxin. The first one is the exotoxin and the second one is the endotoxin. So exotoxin, by the word suggest, means those toxins that are released by the bacteria into the environment, and endotoxins are the ones that are not released by the bacteria but they remain sticked to its outer wall. Exotoxins are the protein that are secreted both by the positive and the gram-negative bacteria, but endotoxins ones are the ones that are secreted only by the gram-negative bacteria. In case of endotoxin, they are more or they are highly toxic, but the endotoxins are less toxic in nature, and because they are more toxic in nature, they cause higher or a severe disease, but the endotoxin do not cause severe diseases. In case of exotoxins, they are heat sensitive, and the endotoxins are not heat sensitive, rather they are heat stable. And this is the reason why that when we encounter the exotoxin, we do not have a fever as an outcome of the microbial infection, but when we encounter the endotoxins, we majorly show, or our body majorly show the symptom of the fever in order to highlight that there is some foreign particle entry into our body. So this was all about the bacterial toxins. Let us discuss about the bacterial plasmids now. So what are plasmids? Plasmids in simple word means these are the extra chromosomal material that is present in case of a cell, which helps the cell to have its genetic material transferred from one bacteria to the next bacteria. And when we talk about the bacterial plasmids in particular, so these are the important features of the bacterial plasmid. Make sure you remember them because questions have been framed from this area in part C. So bacterial plasmids are extra chromosomal. They are mainly small and circular in structure. They are double stranded, supercoiled. They are not an essential component for the survival, that is whether the bacteria have plasmid or it does not have a plasmid, this does not define that whether the bacteria would survive or not. That means this plasmid is not an essentiality for the bacterial survival. The bacteria can survive either in the absence of the plasmid. Talking about the size, it is mostly 1 to 100 kbps, that is kilobase pairs. It is self-replicating. It provides benefits to the bacteria, but it is not an essential component for the survival. And the other names of the bacterial plasmids are sex factor. They are also called conjugates. They are also given the name of extra chromosomal replicants and also the transfer factors. So talking about the class of the plasmid, we have mainly 6 classes of plasmid. First one is the F plasmid or the fertility plasmid. Then we have the R plasmid or the resistance plasmid. Then we have Col plasmid, which majorly functions for the antimicrobials. Then we have the degradation plasmid. After that we have the virulence plasmid, and finally we have the cryptic plasmid, which does not have any major function, or it supports the bacteria in some or the other functions. So this was all about the plasmid and its classes. The next important subtopic is about the flagellas. So what are flagellas? So flagellas are a structure that are present in the bacterial body, which helps it to move, or which helps in the movement of the bacteria from one place to the next place. So talking about the classes of flagella, we have 4 main classes of flagella. The first one is monotrichous, then we have lophotrichous, then we have peritrichous, and finally we have amphitrichous. In case of monotrichous, we have a single flagella. Mono means one, and in case of lophotrichous, we have many flagellas attached to one end of the bacteria. Talking about the peritrichous, the flagella is present all over the body of the bacteria, and talking about the amphitrichous, we have 2 flagellas at the opposite ends of the bacterial body. So these are the 4 main classes: monotrichous, then we have lophotrichous, then we have peritrichous, and finally we have amphitrichous. So the next important thing is about the temperature range, that is, at which temperature range would the bacteria be surviving, or the bacteria would be having death, or it would be facing the maximum growth phase. So we have 3 main temperature ranges. The first one is the minimum, then we have optimum, and then we have the maximum. So minimum temperature range is the range below which the bacteria cannot survive, or minimum temperature range is the range, it is the lowest temperature at which a bacteria could survive. Talking about the maximum, so it is the highest, or it is the point of temperature beyond which a bacteria cannot survive, or we can also say that it is the highest temperature point at which the bacteria could survive. And the optimum temperature range is the range of temperature at which there is the maximum growth of the bacteria, or we can say that it is the range of temperature at which the bacteria flourishes at the maximum rate, in which there is the fastest growth of the bacteria. So talking about the classification depending upon the temperature range, we have 4 main classes. First one is the psychrophils, then we have mesophils, then we have thermophils, and finally we have the hyperthermophils. So the first category of bacteria is the one that survive between the -5 to 20 degree temperature. Then we have mesophils, which survive beyond 15 and up till 40 to 45 degree temperature. Then we have thermophils surviving in extreme temperature, that is beyond 40 and up to the 80 degree temperature range. And finally we have hyperthermophils, which survive beyond the extremist temperature possible, that is beyond 65 and up to 100 or maybe more than 100. So these are the classification of the bacteria depending upon the range of the tolerance, or depending upon the range in which these type of bacteria could survive, or these type of bacteria could tolerate the range of temperature. So make sure you remember the ranges of the temperature and their scientific names. The last point to remember in the microbial physiology is about the microbial nutrition. We have discussed about its reproduction, about its type, and also about its range of temperature in which it could survive. The last point to understand is about the nutrition, or in simple word, about the microbial food. So As humans, we require food for survival, and same is the case with the microbes. They also must be requiring some important components for their survival. And in case of microbes, we have the carbon and the energy as their most important sources for their survival. So depending upon the microbial nutrition, or depending upon how a microbe takes on its nutrition, we have four main classes of the microbial nutrition. The first one is the photoautotrophs, then we have photoheterotrophs, then we have chemoautotrophs, and also we have the chemoheterotrophs. Each one of these microbes would be requiring carbon and energy both for its survival. So the photoautotrophs are the one that takes up its carbon from the environment and it takes up its energy from the sun. Talking about photoheterotrophs, they take up its carbon from the organic matter that is present in the environment and they take up the energy from the sun. Talking about the chemoautotrophs, so they take up its carbon from the environment and its energy from the inorganic sources. They cannot use the sun as their source of energy. And finally we have chemoheterotrophs that take up its carbon from the organic matter and their energy from the inorganic matter present in its environment. So these are the important classification, or these are the important sources of the nutrition that the microbes use. So make sure you remember that which category takes up carbon from which area and the energy from which area. So this is all about the microbial nutrition and the complete microbial physiology in total. So I hope this video was helpful for you. So if you like this video, please do like, share it with your friends, and please subscribe to my channel. And also I'll be coming up very soon with more interesting and useful videos as well. So thank you so much for watching and I'll see you soon. Bye.